Alright, so Alex sent us in a video to be analyzed, and we're going to go over his clean and jerk here. This is actually a complex. There was a pull right before this clean, so he's also doing this not as like a single, but through a full complex, which there's always going to be a little bit more fatigue in that. And just as a reminder, when we do these evaluations, I'm also not discrediting any of the correct movement that they're doing. This kid is a great lifter. We're just going to go over some of the faults and the things that can progressively be worked on. But in general, this kid's lifts are awesome. So let's take a look here. So there's one thing that I see kind of right off the floor, and so he's getting set up for his pull, and then what's something I don't typically like in our athletes is to yank or jerk the bar from the ground. I find it's harder for them to stay in position when they lift off the floor. So we're going to usually use more of like a term called like squeezing the bar off the ground, or a lot of times you just kind of slow somebody's first pull down a little bit. So when they're first lifting off, just deliberately slow it down. That way they're making sure that they're holding position and staying really, really tight, because acceleration is a lot more important than a lot of speed from the floor. So if you kind of watch his shoulders, let's get a little better area. If you kind of watch his shoulders down there, you'll see that they go down, and so he's a little bit softer, loose right now in the arms and in the shoulders, and then he kind of yanks them straight as he's lifting off. What I'd like to see is that he pulls his shoulders straight and back and down and pulls his arms straight before he even lifts off, to try to maintain a little bit more of that lat tension and that shoulder in a good position. So what ends up happening there is shoulders kind of tighten, they pull down as lats are engaging, but then as he kind of yanks, they get pulled forward a little bit. So I think he could slow down or squeeze off the ground a little bit more and get a little less yanking from the ground. From there, his lift is looking pretty good. So as he's pulling, he's clearing the knee well. He's getting these back under. He's hitting a pretty good power position. You can maybe try to get a little bit more upright in this position. His feet are flat, but we're going to primarily focus on this next part. So then as he extends and he starts to pull under the bar, what he's doing is right about here, he should already kind of be putting the brakes on the squat to some extent, so he meets the bar. What he does is he continues to kind of dive down to that bottom position with the bar. So him and the bar are moving down kind of together. So he's staying a little bit underneath the bar as he's heading to the bottom, as the bar is coming down towards him as they're going into the bottom, and ends up causing this kind of crashing effect, and it hits somebody really hard into that bottom position. We're going to look at it in regular speed. So here we'll watch. He kind of dives down, bar hits him down. So he's got a lot of speed into that bottom position, but he's moving down. Now the bar's moving down, 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 down. Now the bar's meeting them as they're heading down, where he really could have met the bar much higher. Instead, where the bar really hits his shoulders and his weight is almost right at the bottom position. So that causes that bar to kind of slide forward on his shoulders a little bit. And then that sliding forward causes sometimes that forward recovery or the lift getting pulled forward. He's really strong at this weight, so he's able to hold on to it and stand up. But that could get a little bit more challenging with heavier weight. So what he needs to practice on is he needs to practice on meeting the bar at his pulling height. And then once he meets the bar, rides it down more like you're riding down a front squat. So you receive the bar, and then you sit into the down and up position. That's going to help you resemble your front squat a little bit more, so you have a little bit of that eccentric loading to that bottom position, but you're going to be timed a lot better, and you're going to make sure that the bar is exactly where you want it. So it's just going to be a much stronger squat position as opposed to that weight hitting you kind of hard at the bottom position, or people sometimes getting pinned in that bottom position and having to come up out of a pause squat. So I'll do another video on correcting that meeting the bar, but that's one of the things that he could probably be working on. So let's move into the jerk now. So on the jerk, Let's go over his dip position. Oh, see, he's still in a complex. He's got another front squat. Let's get, here we go. So I think we can kind of see it right there. Everything drifts forward a little bit. So he's sitting, 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 and right at the bottom there, you can see that there's that little bit of a shift forward where everything kind of drops into that down and then forward. There's that little bit of shift. So he just needs to try to keep his chest a little bit more upright. Let the hips sit straight down between the legs, and then focus on maybe trying to keep the weight a little bit back towards like the front of the heel and not letting yourself shift forward a little bit too early. A lot of times that's also just anticipation for the split jerk. So if that front foot's going to be moving forward, sometimes people start anticipating that step a little bit too early. So a cue that I might sometimes give somebody is drive, then step. So that way they're thinking in two steps. They're focusing on the drive first and then the reach with the foot, as opposed to just maybe thinking step, 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 or front foot, front foot. So somebody's has that tendency to shorten it, and that's all they're focused on. Sometimes they'll rush to start moving that front foot or anticipating that forward movement of that front foot. So that could maybe be something that's focused on with a cue. I'm not sure if that's his issue, so he might also just need to work on some pause in dip and then jerk, so that way he's making sure that he's staying balanced before he goes into that drive. Another great drill for that. Then he drives up. That's great. Getting into a good split position. So he's got, you know, front shin vertical. That back foot looks loaded. That back knee is slightly bent. A really good position there. The bar does look a little bit forward in front of him, and I wouldn't be surprised if that just gets better with maybe fixing that dip position. He might need to focus on trying to push the bar back a little bit. Push presses can help that. Again, it might just be that forward dip position. And then as he catches, now we start getting the bar a little bit further back, so that's good. So you see he has to compensate a little bit though by kind of rounding this back into that arch to try to get it where it needs to. So if that's a little bit straighter drive, we'll see a little bit less kind of arching in the back. And then as he recovers, he steps in. So it's hard to see from this angle, but usually if we see that kind of lateral movement as we're catching, where you're recovering by stepping one foot like to the left or the right, it's typically tight roping the split position. So if he's catching and his feet aren't wide enough in the split, then he might not have enough balance once that bar gets overhead, especially sometimes under that back leg, because that leg's further back and that hip doesn't have something directly underneath the weight. They might kind of fall towards that inside, that opened up position. So working on widening the stance when they catch is a good way to kind of fix that recovery. It's kind of hard to see from this angle, but that would always be my guess, and that's usually what's happening when people are stumbling left and right. It's usually going to be that tight roping, that split position. So again, great lift. If y'all want to watch kind of the full thing kind of at regular speed, you can kind of see some of the stuff we're doing. Again, this was a full complex, so he had a pull right before this, one or two pulls, but we're just going to go into the clean. And then he has a front squat here. And then he gets set, and then he goes into his jerk. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps us continue to make this content. If you have any questions about anything weightlifting related or video related, drop it in the comments. I'll be sure to go in there and answer. Thanks a lot. Talk to y'all soon.